you want to search for anything, look at Google. But if you want to discover yourself, if you want to discover that limitless potential that's there within each one of you, then what do you need to do? You've got to search inside yourself. How many of you would like to be in a place like this? Completely chilled. Show of hands, guys. Great. So I think we're all in the right place. And, after a heavy lunch, right? Nothing like this, right? But I'm going to request you to be awake and let's have some fun this afternoon. Okay. So here's a small question. Okay. How many of you think that mindfulness is about the mind being full, which is all those things on the right-hand side of the screen, or how many of you think it's being completely empty on the left-hand side, right? So how many for the right-hand side? Mind is full of things. Come on, be honest. No? Great. How many of you think that mindfulness is about having your mind empty? Raise your hand. Okay, so are you all raising your hand? Because this is not raising your hand, this is raising your hand, okay? Okay, great. So we have a very, very enlightened and august audience here. Okay, let's see. But before we get on to this, let's just see if you can identify. What's this? We have a goldfish, right? Remember that fish that was swimming in the tank? This is one of those fishes. And I haven't let a shark in there as yet, but what's the attention span? Anybody? What's the attention span of a goldfish? 9 seconds. Okay. So what do you think? Is the attention span of a human being today more than this or less than this? How many of you think that the attention span is more than this? Okay. How many of you think that your own attention span today as human beings is less than this? Okay, very, very wise audience. So guess what, guys? This is just some statistics that, you might be able to relate to, right? So one, today the human attention span is as low as 8 seconds, which is less than a goldfish. Have you seen one in a tank looking here and there? So that's really us, and that's not me saying that, that's a Microsoft study, right? Every 6.5 minutes, I think even that's too much, people look at their phones, right? How often do we look at our phones? People check Facebook or whatever, social media, at least 21 times a day. And 74 times a day they check email. 65 to 130 messages are being sent every single day. This is from the University of California. How many of you can identify with at least some of these? Come on, be honest, put your hand up. All of us are there, right? Absolutely. So how are we going to keep inspired and how are we going to keep people informed if we ourselves are in la-la land, right? We're distracted, we're confused, we're looking here and there, we're like the goldfish. So let's see what else is there in store for us. Okay. How many of you believe that multitasking is great? How many of you multitask? Let's ask. Let's put your hand up. Right? That's the mantra. All of us, we got to do too many things together. Now, it's great if you're doing small things. And I think women are really blessed because, you take on so much responsibility at work as well as home. Some of the guys just, avoid some of the responsibility, right? So it's okay when you're doing the low value stuff. Make sure the maid is there, make sure, the drivers come, make sure the delivery has happened, all that is fine. But if you're going to be concentrating and doing something really important, really strategic, then multitasking is a myth. Because each time you move your attention to something else, it takes you actually almost 23 minutes to get back to peak activity. The reason I'm just sharing this with you is that we have all got into this mode of doing so many things, but the final output is not really coming out. And there are lots of internal and external distractions. Now this is just some statistical data. 80% of our thoughts are very often negative, and 95% are repetitive. Why? Actually, it's not your fault. There's something called a negativity bias, and we're all born with that. And I'm going to be talking about that a little later. And with that, I'm going to take you to the next one, which is why we were talking about the negativity bias. Imagine that you have a great day going, and then you have one argument during the day. Does it spoil things for you? Yes? Yes. Absolutely. So it actually takes 3 positive interactions to overcome one negative reaction, right? So you've got to work a lot harder at being positive, okay? So be careful of your environment. And how many of you, be honest about this, even after you had an argument, a heated one the previous day, you're still giving comebacks that evening and the next day as well? I wish I could have said this. Maybe I should have said that. It happens to all of us. But we've got to make sure that we don't get distracted, because if we are distracted, how can we keep people informed and inspired? You've got to be at your top game. You're the leaders. You guys are the future. Yeah? How can you be limitless if you yourself are getting limited by distractions? Right? So the essence truly is, how do you become that limitless leader? I like a show of hands. How many of you would like to be successful both at work and at home? No brainer. How many of you would like to get a promotion and a salary increase? Great. We talked of cost control, but this is hope. It's okay. Spend on the right things. I think that was the right message. The reason I'm asking this is because all of us have that capability. We've just got to look for anything, like they say. You want to search for anything? Look at Google. But if you want to discover yourself, if you want to discover that limitless potential that's there within each one of you, then what do you need to do? You've got to search inside yourself. So let's see how we can get on that journey. Interesting journey? Yes. Great. Okay. This is just something else, which is another thing, some documented evidence. We're actually distracted 47% of the time. Okay, this is a Yale study. And there's something called DMN there, and I'm going to talk to you a little later about that when I explain why this happens. Let's see what's happening. Autopilot behavior. I presume a lot of you have spouses, and there are times that I know that there are some topics that come up very often, and they end up the same way, right? The same argument at home. Anyone is familiar with that? My God, you have such brilliant marriages. I'm the loser here. Be honest. So we tend to do things. How many of you drive to your work taking the same road every single day? Good. Little more honesty here. Good. So what happens is we're all creatures of habit, and we're all designed to be that way. Why? Because the brain is wired that way. It's there to protect you. And because it's there to protect you, and you see so much of negativity around, you've got to keep yourself very positive, because you've got to be inspired. With the attention deficit that's there, we looked at it, 47%. How do you do that? How do you perform like a leader and be inspired in a limitless world when there is a VUCA world? How many of you have heard the term VUCA? If you haven't, just tell me, otherwise I'll explain it to you. VUCA was a term coined in the World War II in the American Army. And it stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So, big words. But let's say, for example, suddenly we were hit with COVID. It seems a little while back, but times were tough then. Yes or no? And you all in the business of healthcare were perhaps in the middle of it all. And I'm sure you all did a great job. But in this scenario, how do we keep inspired? That is the question. Because if you are inspired, you'll keep people informed. If you are inspired, you can be limitless. And that's how you get to your KPIs. So let's see how and what we need to do to get there. Okay, so let me just talk to you a little bit about our brain. And it's all of us. So there are actually 3 parts to your brain. And the oldest part is really called your brainstem. It's actually 250 million years old. This is called the reptilian brain. The next part of the brain, which is the next oldest, is the limbic brain. It's called the emotional brain. It's about 150 million years old. And guess what? The latest part is the thinking brain, the executive brain. The prefrontal cortex is only about 2 to 3 million years old. So imagine, I'm going to ask you, how much do you think is really in our control, in the sense that if for 250 million years plus another 150 years, so about 400 million years we've been behaving like either reptiles or in a very primitive state out of just reaction. Can you ever imagine a tiger there and you say, hey, let me go and pet him? Is it possible? No, because they react with instinct, right? I'm sure none of you are going to make the mistake of going to a python and saying, let me just pet it a little bit. They don't think, they just act. If they see a prey, they'll swallow it. So a lot of us, and a majority of us, are wired to react out of instinct. But guess what, guys? There is hope. Because we do have something called the prefrontal cortex. What does that do? It allows you to make relevant and good decisions. Decisions that are going to keep you inspired. Decisions that are going to keep you being innovative. Because you have a choice. Sometimes you say, oh God, I don't know how I said that. Or how I did that. And it's okay, because sometimes things happen. But if you activate this part of your brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, then you can make the right decisions. So how many of you want to activate the prefrontal cortex and make decisions which are there? Very few. Hello guys at the back. Thank you very much. I was wondering, how are we going to be inspired if we don't activate this part of your brain? So I'm going to talk to you about how we can activate this. And this was really the part. What happens, right? I talked to you about being distracted. I talked to you about the brain being concerned. There's something called an amygdala. Right? Ever heard of the word? Anybody? Good. A lot of good science students here. Basically, what does it do? See, the brain has been designed to protect you. To protect you, it's going to do anything, right? To keep you safe. And it was very relevant. Our ancestors woke up every day, the cavemen, and they had to face tigers. They had very little choice. It was all over in a few minutes. Either you ran away, or you killed the tiger, or you made a good meal for the tiger. You've got to really thank your ancestors that all of us are still alive, because if they weren't smart, we wouldn't be alive. The brain has something called a fight or flight response. And this brain protects you because sometimes you've got to take good, quick action. But the good news is that we don't live with tigers anymore. This part of the brain that actually helped us survive is also very active today because of so many hundreds of years. So fear can be separate. It doesn't mean that you've got to see a tiger or a python to be scared anymore. How many of you would think that if COVID came and you were worried about your job loss? Come on, be honest. Did it happen at all? Great. How many of you, if your boss says, hello, I think we need to have a chat. Right? Is that something that might evoke a little bit of uncertainty? Let's be honest. Come on, all of us have gone through that, right? You don't know. So immediately what tends to happen is that this amygdala kicks in. It could happen when you're in, driving a car. Somebody comes driving rashly around you. Instinctively, you're wired to protect yourself. Now, the good thing is that the amygdala protects you. The not so good thing is that it shuts everything else off. It's like a switch. So no thinking, no feeling, no emotion. You're like in that highly active mode. And it's good, right? Imagine if you met a tiger, your ancestors met one and you said, let me check whether he's in a good mood today and have breakfast with him. Or you don't have time to think. It's over. Quickly, either you run or you just get eaten up. But the beauty is that used to happen for a few minutes, right? So adrenaline used to kick into your system and you would take amazing action. So imagine if you were to run for your life, how fast you could run. But the not so good thing today is that we don't have tigers, but we have these constant threat signals that you perceive. A not so nice environment, a challenge that you can't take on. And thus what happens is that even though adrenaline is pumped in, too much of pumping in of adrenaline leads to a bit of stress, cortisol, it turns out. I don't want to get into the science of it. You guys are experts. So the thing is, the trick in being inspired, the trick in living a limitless life is to manage this amygdala. So that your thinking brain, your ability to act rationally, your ability to be present and have great relationships and work at phenomenal ability lies in managing this. So how do we control this little amygdala in all of us? And that's what we're going to learn today. So this is where mindfulness comes in. And that's really my topic today. So how many of you have actually heard of mindfulness? Just be honest and tell me so I know how much to grade. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about it and a little bit of history here. So mindfulness actually originated from Buddha and Buddhism. Okay? So 800 years after he died, there was a monk called Asangaha, who again revitalized these practices, and Tibetan Buddhism took it. Now in those times, a lot of their teachings were in Pali, which is the local language you might have studied in your history books, Pali, Prakrit. And there was a word called sati, not the sati that you might commonly have heard of, but sati here meant being highly aware, remembering, and being completely in touch with yourself. Okay? So mindfulness is building that ability. And I'll come to some formal definitions. Now, as Buddhism traveled from India to China, dhyan, the Indian word dhyan, became Chen. And then as it went to Japan, it became Zen. You might have heard of Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance. Now, some of these Zen monks went to America and they taught some of these practices. And you know what happens when an American loves something, right? They do a great job at marketing. They took yoga from us and turned it into $1 billion industry, right? So now when you go to Culfit, you've got to decide if your track pants are okay, your t-shirt is okay, your socks are okay. Great for the economy. So they did the same thing to mindfulness. They stripped off all the spiritual teachings and they gave us the Maggie version of it, right? Everything ready in 2 minutes. Nothing more, because we don't have time for more than that. So let's see how we can benefit from the learnings of mindfulness into becoming an inspired and limitless leader. So mindfulness is really popular today. So you have HBR articles, it's on Time, and if you aren't mindful today, then maybe you missed something. So let's get into this a bit. So what's the definition? So the definition here is, it's the awareness of paying attention on purpose. Okay, so imagine the key word is awareness. And in the present moment, non-judgmentally. What is it that the one thing that you carry till you're alive? Anybody? What's the one thing? So long as you're alive, what do you carry with you? Sorry? Body. Okay, what else do you carry with you? Emotions, body, emotions. What else do you carry with you? Memory. Okay. But another thing that you always carry along you, when you normally want to check if a guy is alive or somebody, you check, is he breathing? So just getting conscious of your breath has amazing changes that you can experience in your life. Okay? So there are, the 5 core components of mindfulness. Okay? What is it? Awareness, attention, acceptance, non-judgmental, kindness, and choice. These are some key words that are associated. Why is it important? And let's look at some of these words and how you can build that into your life. So mindfulness isn't just the easiest thing to do. It's a skill. And guess what? If you want to learn better cricket, you practice batting. You want to be better at mindfulness? Just practice it. It's something anybody can learn. It's not a quick fix, because it actually rewires your brain into becoming limitless. Remember, we talked about managing the amygdala, which was creating all kinds of problems and actually helping you. It's not about emptying the mind. People think, oh God, do I have to meditate? Means what do I have to do? Become a guru and go on top of a mountain? No. You can be that inspired, limitless person while working every single day. And you have to stop thinking, no, it's not possible. Thoughts are going to keep coming. So all your worries about, what's this, major meditation stuff? No. It's great. So here's an old saying. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. So whether it's cricket, there's a ball coming at you and the batsman has to bat. There's some time. Now that person can choose to be like Surya Kumar and hit the ball from the offside to the leg side, or he can defend, or he can get bored. So there's always the choice. So if somebody is shouting in your office, you don't have to. You have a choice whether you can keep the tone down and let that person know that the person perhaps is out of control of it. Because two people raising their voice at the same time doesn't help anybody, okay? So just keep that in mind, and let's look at, so here's the thing, right? We can't change our environment always. How many of you think you can change your boss? This is the company, this is the boss, this is whatever, right? You've got to be the most inspired person so that it doesn't matter who's there above you or below you. You're going to do what you need to do and excel at that, okay? You can choose how you want to respond. So let's look at 3 situations, okay? Any event happens. So you have 3 choices in life. Let's look at one event. It could be a dominant boss, it could be an aggressive neighbor, it could be whatever. You have 3 choices. What can happen? You can either say, I don't want to be part of this, I'm just going to withdraw. Or you can react and start arguing and getting into arguments. How many people have won arguments by shouting at each other? Anybody? Good, very intelligent audience. You can't win like that. You've got to arrive at some common ground, okay? And, or you have a choice of responding, which means even if somebody is shouting, it's up to you how you want to respond to that person, okay? And that ability to really pause. So let's be honest, how many of all of us need to pause in some area of our life? Physical, mental, working, financial habits. All of us need to build that ability, and that's what mindfulness helps you build. So how does it done? It's done by a process called neuroplasticity, which means your brain can actually be rewired. You don't have to believe that, look, this is the way I was born and this is the way I'm going to die, right? Take it or leave it. It's great. You can change. You have that ability. The brain has that ability to change and become a better person. You have that ability to be inspired even if you're not right now. You have that ability to be inspired and engaging even if you're not. But it's up to you what you want to do. And this is where mindfulness helps. So what is this based on? So there are really 3 steps. One is we learn to build attention. What does that mean? You train your mind so that you learn to build attention, and there's a calmness about you. So this is what I'm going to say. Imagine a sky, a blue sky. That's your mind. And there are a few clouds. These clouds represent your emotions. It could be anger, it could be jealousy, it could be cowardice, whatever. When you get angry, the day you're able to say, okay, there is anger arising within me, and not saying I am angry. If you say you're angry, you've gone with the anger. But if you're able to disassociate, then you have a freedom of choice. How many of you would like to have, like I said, greater relationships, better job, more money? Come on, hands up. Learn to build this pause. Learn to not get carried away by your emotions, because this is what destroys everything. You could be very bright, you could be very smart, you could be very skilled, but if you can't control your emotions in the workplace, you're not going to get very far. Your boss is going to say, very good, but not leadership material. Okay? The second thing is self-knowledge, right? So you should be able to sense, how is it that you can train yourself to say, oh God, now I'm getting angry, I need to cool down. And if you have a bad temper, and you can actually control it before it, kind of explodes, it's going to help you at work, it's going to help you at home. And the third thing that really helps is building habits of kindness. I'm going to give you a small exercise. Ready for a small exercise? Yes. Okay, great. This is meant to be coming later, right? So let's do it now because I think all of you are ready for it. So I just want you to look around the room, look at 2 people, and just say, I wish you that you become happy. Just look at them. Just look around. Come on, 2 people whom you don't know, and just wish them. Okay. Okay, great. But let me ask you, 10 seconds, when you thought like that, right? I can see a smile on everybody's face. Imagine at work when you're really tense and you have this wish How do you think it's going to make you feel at work? Come on. Are you going to smile and laugh like you did? Or are you going to be grumpy? So it's just your attitude of having and building a safe space. There was a big study done in Google on what matters most in terms of performance. And they said, unless there's a safe space, unless employees feel safe enough to express themselves, be part of, express themselves openly and share ideas, employees do not perform. So if you're a leader and you have a team and your team doesn't feel safe enough to express themselves, then guess what? You have a team that's not performing in a limitless fashion. Okay? So to inspire, to keep people informed, inspired, create safe spaces. And, as we saw earlier, you had a whole audience of, imagine that sailor. What it would have taken him to actually stop winning and help somebody else. That's perhaps the strongest thing one can do. So similarly, you may be very bright and very skilled, but if you are not part of a team and you don't take care, your strength as a team is only as strong as the weakest person. Okay, so make sure you carry your teams along with you. Okay, let's go. So, like we said, make sure your mind is like that open sky and you should be able to see these clouds of emotions that come around. Don't become part of the rain. Don't become part of all the fear that's around. Learn to take and keep a distance around from them. And the other thing is, treat your mind like a puppy. What happens if you have a puppy and it runs somewhere? You gently catch it and bring it back. So if your mind is running astray with all kinds of thoughts of anger and fear and everything, find a way to train it to bring it back. Okay? Because that's what's going to keep you centered and for a leadership role. Okay, so how many of you want to learn to respond rather than react? Come on. Small thing, it's going to take just a few seconds to teach you and then you can practice. Great. So what do we need to do? Learning how to respond is just as easy as going to the gym. Have any of you done any form of exercise at all? Ever? Walked, run, moved a little bit, danced, doing anything? You have, right? So just in a gym, what do? If you lift one dumbbell, it's one repetition, right? What does it do? It builds physical muscle. You can build mental muscle by just focusing on your breath. Okay? And we're going to do a small exercise soon. What happens is that when you learn to be conscious of your breathing, you activate this part, which is your prefrontal lobe, which is the part that looks at awareness. So once you build that awareness, you can build attention. That attention is going to help you detect when you get angry or when you have experienced fear or you experience. And you, instead of reacting to that, have that ability to manage it before it becomes something that's out of. So learn to focus on your breath. And we're going to do a small exercise. Okay? Very soon. Because each time you focus on breath, wherever you are, right? So you could be, let's say for example, you're waiting for a doctor's meeting. How much does it take you to just close your eyes for a minute and just focus on your breath? Don't do it while driving at the signal, please. Don't do it when you're swimming underwater. But you can do it at a lot of times, at your breath, before a meeting. Anything important, just get a hold of yourself. Because that's the power of breath. Okay, and we'll do a small exercise where I'll show you how we can do it. So, learn to train your attention so it's available on demand when you need it. Not, you said something to your boss and then said, oh God, why did I say it? Or you said something to your spouse and then you say later on, oh, maybe it wasn't the best thing to say. So if you're able to train yourself, you'll be able to get out of these sticky situations. So people with high emotional intelligence, right? Remember you saw that video on attitude and skills and knowledge? What makes a difference? You could be the most intelligent person, but if you don't have that emotional intelligence, you're not going to do as well. And it's proven around the world that people who have good emotional intelligence earn much more than people who just have IQ. People who are able to manage their emotions. Okay? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a small 10-second exercise. Can I request you all just to sit comfortably? Just close your eyes. Just for 10 seconds. Yeah, we'll do that. Just close your eyes. And as you do that, sit comfortably. Keep your hands up straight. Keep your spine straight. And just focus on your breath. Gently see whether... Don't try and change it. Don't try and move your breath. Don't hasten it. See how it flows out. Is the breath thick or thin? Is it fast? Is it slow? And now I'm going to play a little gong and keep breathing till you hear the sound. Don't try and change the quality of your breath. Just watch it. If there are thoughts, just watch it. Okay, you can come back. A small exercise like this can actually can reduce that amygdala. It can bring it back. It can help you collect your thoughts. And why do I say this? You have an important meeting. Just for a few seconds, watch your breath before that. Collect your thoughts. Because in that meeting, you've got to go out there and make an impact. You've got to talk. You've got to make the points that you've been planning for so long. How many times you go into a meeting, you think you want to say this, and then the meeting's over and you've come back not achieving what you wanted out of the meeting and not having said. And then you say, why can't I speak at this meeting? Maybe I'm not getting noticed. Where's my executive presence? Why don't people, I have so many ideas, but I can't say anything. The reason is that you get too involved in that meeting. But if you center yourself, right, before a meeting, before doing anything important, just a couple of breaths, that has the ability to switch that amygdala off. Remember, we talked about that threat machine. Remember it, everybody? Right? That's the power. Now imagine, a couple of breaths is like doing a couple of dumbbells. So this one builds physical machine, but that one builds mental. Which is better for you in your workplace? Mental ability or physical ability? Mental, right? Always remember this. So there are many ways to do this. What we're going to do is, these are just two small exercises. So I'm going to just take you through how this keeps helping you. So leadership, right? How does inspirational leadership, where does it begin with? It begins with the mind. If you are the leader, the way you think, the way you talk, the way you behave sets the tone for what is expected in your team, right? If you're out of control, or if you're the one who can't control his temper, or if you're not organized, believe me, the team's going to watch what you do. So being able to control and lead yourself is the most important thing. When you are able to lead yourself, you can lead your team because you set standards of behavior that are expected. If you are limitless, your team can be limitless. If you are inspired, your team will be inspired. Right? Don't you watch the boss's mood? And haven't you gone up to the secretary and said, how's the boss's mood today? Right or wrong? Come on. How many of you have done that? Happens, right? Why? Because they set the tone. So if you as a leader can't control yourself, then you're going to be setting the wrong expectation, right? That's what mindfully, it has 4 parts to this. And I'm just going to, one is self-awareness, an awareness of your own thoughts and behavior. Next is self-leadership. How do you react to, as a boss or a leader, how do you react to adversity? How do you react to, how quickly can you get back when things go wrong? Something doesn't go right at the plant, or something has not gone right at home, or whatever. How quickly you can get back up. How you manage yourself is about self-leadership. Okay? And team awareness. How aware are you of the feelings and emotions of the team? Is the team feeling low today? Is the team on top of their game? The days of being a leader where you just tell people what to do doesn't help. Because you have to judge how your team is that day. And these are the skills of being conscious of your breath, or being conscious of being just aware, that ability. I've just given you 2 small exercises, but this is the impact if you do it, right, regularly. And team leadership. How about being empathetic and compassionate? If you yourself are not aware of your own moods and behaviors, how can you possibly aware of how your team member is feeling or what is the mood today? We all know in corporate life, everything doesn't go perfectly well. But as a leader, you still have responsibility. You have to lift your team. You have to inspire them. You have to keep them informed. You can only do that when you are at the top of your game. And that's why we talk about being a mindful leader. So build the skills of being aware, build the skills of being on top of your game and, completely in charge of your own self so you can lead wisely. So just a little bit of explanation about self-awareness. When you talk about being self-aware, what does it mean? You're aware of your thoughts. So detect the thoughts that are not positive, right? Before they overtake you and, dominate your worldview. Be aware of your emotions and learn to manage them. Okay, how can you do that? By focusing on breath, by focusing on sensation. I just made you do a very small exercise. And you know what? You don't have to be a monk to do it. All it takes is 100 minutes, not 10,000 hours. 100 minutes is what? A little over an hour. And you don't have to do it in one sitting. I'm saying practice just 5 minutes every day, 2 minutes, 1 minute. Practice 30 seconds at your desk before a meeting. This will build that ability where you can take complete control, be completely aware, be limitless, and be inspired. Self-leadership, find purpose and meaning in your own life. Align yourself to that vision. And you can do that only when you begin to believe in it as a leader. How do you become resilient? You know what the definition of resilience is? The ability to bounce back quickly. How can you bounce back quickly when it's not been a great day? Focus on your breath. Okay? It's going to help you keep that amygdala down in control. It's going to help you get back. Feeling good? Focus on breath. Feeling down? Focus on breath. Feeling whatever, just focus. Just spend a little time with yourself. It'll get you back to track very, very quickly. Okay? And I just want to, as we come to a close, I'm just going to share why I got involved with this kind of work. So, like you, I started my career many years ago, almost 30 years ago, 1989 if I remember. And in that time, India was a very different India. And if you worked at a very highly driven company like I was working, if you were 100% of your target, it was considered, okay, that's what you're paid a salary for, to your targets. If you were not 120%, you were an average performer. And if you were 150, only then you could have thought, now, that's ridiculous year on year to keep, delivering. But we had no choice, we were in that first generation of middle class people. And so I also learned that that's the only way to work. And then 20 years ago, I was hired to work overseas. And in the first 2 weeks, my boss had to counsel me. He said, come here. He's an American, and he looked at me and he said, what's the problem? And I said, what's the problem? You tell me, I don't think there's any problem. And he said, listen, why are you pushing people like this all the time? I didn't understand. I said, what do you mean? He said, it's okay, you just arrived yesterday. We're going to give you time to perform. You don't have to get after everybody, but that's all I'd learned. Right? I really hadn't learned in those days to say thank you to somebody. If it was a good idea, okay, great, let's do it. Make sure the sales and the numbers and everything went. But I had to learn how to say, just get a hold of my own self and my emotions and cool down and carry and look at people, because in Dubai, there are over 220 nationalities. Not everybody speaks English as well as you do because you went to an English school. It was a really humbling experience for me. And then, top it off, one day I go home and my wife says, hello, this is not your office and I'm not your secretary. So please change the tone of your... I said, hello, I come back after a hard day. What do you expect, yeah? It is like difficult to accept because you're trained. Sometimes the environment trains you to behave in a particular way and you operate on autopilot. So you operate at work, you're a big boss. When you go home, You're part of the family. And that's when I realized that I had to look deeper within myself. For all the knowledge, I could go to Google. But to find out the way you behave and the impact you have around you requires a little bit of courage and a little bit of each one of us to look within. Because only when you look within and you fix yourself and your behavior can the world outside change. I was a different person. Yes, work is important, but you don't have to be a bull in a china shop. Goals are important, profits are important, but you have people, not robots. People have emotions. Keep them informed, keep them inspired. Thank you very much.